Hi everyone. To those who have just joined us, we are going to give people another 2 minutes to join the webinar, and we'll get started in earnest about 2 minutes past the hour. So just hold tight and we'll be with you in a couple of minutes. Anyone just joining? We're just giving people another minute or two to join us and we will get started. Numbers climbing up now. If you've just joined us, we're getting started in earnest about a minute's time. Great stuff. Well, welcome everyone. This is the next in our webinar series all around M365 Copilot. And we're going to spend the next 35 minutes together just speaking through some ideas we have at WM Reply on how leaders can drive return on investment for M365 Copilot. So if for those I haven't met, I'm Katie McCallum, our senior principal for Copilot at WM Reply. My background's actually in change and adoption and modern workplace strategy. But this year, I'm leading our offering and strategy around assessing and enabling Copilot's impact with our customers. So this means I'm working with a lot of our customers, as you take your first steps with Copilot. And this could be anything from reviewing the art of the possible the tool can bring and exploring those use cases, assessing the capability of Copilot as part of Microsoft's early adopter program or your own pilot, and measuring and testing the impact it has and helping you establish a business case for moving forward, starting to roll out Copilot to your first licensed users, or exploring technical readiness and extensibility capability that you might want to enable in your organization. So always do reach out if any of those topics are front of mind for you. We're more than happy to have another conversation that's pertinent to your organization specifically. So today is the second of our 4 webinars dedicated to all things Copilot. Last time we heard from James Mace all about prompt engineering and perfecting prompts to get the most out of Copilot in M365. I absolutely loved this webinar, and it really got me thinking about prompt engineering as the kind of next step in communication styles. And it's actually a skill that we'll all need, not just in our modern workplace world, but in our day-to-day lives as well. So if you missed it, don't worry, just head to our YouTube channel and you can watch it back at any time. So on screen, you'll see QR codes to register for our 2 upcoming sessions. The first is on the 28th of March, and it looks beyond Copilot in M365 and starts to untangle the differences between all the different Copilots in Microsoft technology. They love a brand and sticking on brand, but that means there's a little bit of confusion out there. So that could be anything from Copilot in Sales, Copilot in Power Platform as well. So Ant and James will be unpacking all the different Copilots and what they mean and what their opportunity could be for your organization. And then our highly anticipated Copilot Extensibility webinar will take place on the 2nd of April. So go ahead and register for that one too and check it out. So we are using a webinar format today, which means that you can use the Q&A feature at any time. As it's just me presenting, I'm going to present for about 25, 30, 35 minutes, and then I will turn to the Q&A and start to answer the questions that have come up, and make sure I share those answers with you as well. So I'll return to the questions, but as they pop up in your head as we go along, don't forget you can use them at any time. Use the Q&A feature, sorry, at any time. So this topic of return on investment, and it is at the front of everybody's minds, and the topic of conversation with everybody, all of our customers we're speaking to about Copilot. So just a reminder of the scope of this and what we're talking about here. We're talking about Copilot in M365. So if you want to explore the other Copilots in Microsoft technology, do come to our webinar next week. So Copilot in M365, let's remind ourselves of the value proposition and why return on investment is such a highly kind of discussed topic right now when it comes to this technology. So Copilot in M365 is Microsoft's answer for a fit-for-work generative AI assistant, like ChatGPT, that exists within your M365 apps today. So it's there to assist users. It's there to be a safe and secure way for employees to use a generative AI tool. I know lots of you will have sort of blacklisted, whitelisted ChatGPT as you've seen fit, depending on the risk in your organization. And this enables us to be leveraging that type of technology, but within our existing estate and with the level of safety and security around it as well. So it's a tool that helps users find information, have more effective meetings, and create that first draft. So those tie into the value proposition Microsoft have shared with us, which is the broken meeting, the information labyrinth, and the empty page. So these are the three key reasons from their work lab research as to why they've built out this technology. So in their own words, it's set to fix these problems. It's ultimately here to make us more productive, but to speed up those basic tasks. Okay, and that's the distinction we always want to make to our users. Sometimes when we have poor perceptions of Copilot, it's due to setting expectations too high, that I might be able to just brief Copilot to do my work for me. Copilot is there to give you the first draft and help you take that first step and speed up manual tasks, so you can focus on the work that's uniquely human, in Microsoft's words. And it's there to save us time every day. So it's there to be, extremely profitable for us, because it's supposed to save employee time to help them focus on the things that really matter to your organization. So as announced in January, it used to be that you could only buy 300 minimum Copilot licenses with a commitment for a year. As announced in January by Microsoft, you can now purchase with no minimum license. So you don't have to be part of the Early Access program, and you don't need to meet that minimum bundle of 300. But whichever way you look at it, even if you're going to just license 20 people, the license is significant at $30 per month with that 12-month commitment as well. So it's really no wonder that it's a topic of, a lot of discussion with almost every customer that we've been speaking to in the last 6 months. So it is an expensive proposition. And if we think about the list price of an E3 license for our entire productivity suite, and then we look at bolting on that Copilot license of $30 per user per month, again, list price. When you see it as an AI bolt-on to the existing core license, the cost can seem somewhat eye-watering to some. And based on customer reaction, it's a kind of, people have been a little bit shocked by the price, but also starting to already see those benefits already. So, lots of conversations out there on this. And obviously these are list prices, and there will be some enterprise agreements where this reduces somewhat. But, if we look at that, especially over a kind of longer EA agreement, we could be thinking about almost doubling our modern workplace licensing costs, which, does seem really significant. If we extrapolate that out and think about an organization of different number of employees as well, again, at list price, you can see the dollars yearly price commitment in here, which is, again, very significant. So, it's no surprise people are saying, okay, if we're going to put our money down for this, and, we are excited about the proposition, but it is significant. What is the return, and how do we start to measure that return? So today is all about taking this conversation on to see how we start to measure that return on investment. What do we even mean by our return on investment, and what leaders can do themselves to drive return on investment for M365 Copilot? Because it's an active thing. It doesn't just arrive the licensing cost and it necessarily gives you that benefit straight away. It needs to be enabled by the way that you roll this out, the way that you measure it, the way you empower your employees. So we need to think about how that productivity is measured. We need to think about what we mean by return and what we mean by gains and costs associated in order for us to really leverage this capability. So over the next 10 or so slides, I want to talk about at a very high level how we drive ROI in 10 steps. And this will take us from the basics to thinking a little bit outside the box around what we mean by this. And as I say, if you want to have this conversation about your organization specifically, more than happy to have that. Please do reach out. But these are sort of 10 key things to have in mind when you're thinking about this investment and driving return from this investment. So the first thing that we need to really do is define what your organization means by return on investment. So if we look at this calculation at the top, this is the traditional financial return on investment. We're thinking about the gains from the investment minus the costs over cost times 100. That gives us that traditional percentage ROI cost. So, if the cost is taking us, it's costing us so much, we can start to equate that when it comes to Copilot into the employee minutes and hours that are going to be saved from this investment. So it's kind of indisputable, I think, amongst everyone I've spoken to, is that the key metric here is around speed and time savings that is going to unlock that kind of financial return, financial benefit. But there's kind of a couple of things that I want to agree with you guys on before we move forward, while we expand this definition. So first is that time savings are all very well. If I'm saving my employee 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day, whatever it might be, that's great. But we need to be able to extrapolate that and go, okay, what does this actually result in? What does our time saving result in? What are the genuine gains that are coming from this? So we need to be able to assess whether you're going to benefit from that additional time. And to be clear, and we'll come on to this in a minute, it doesn't have to mean that's going to be time being super productive and getting through your to-do list. It could be time that's going to improve well-being of employees and increase retention. So we need to expand this just beyond more minutes in a day, get more done. And that's really key. And to do that and to feel confident on that, we need to measure where users are going to spend this additional time. So it's all very well measuring the time saved, and we'll come on to how we do that in a moment. But where is this time going to be used? And we need to take an active role as leaders as to advise employees as to where this reclaimed time, as we call it, would be used. So the second point I want us to agree on is that the value is not just on those time savings. This has lots of different tangential benefits as well beyond the minutes back in the day. Those minutes back in the day can enable pure productivity and effort reduction, but they can also lead to quality in work improvements. They can lead to text being more comprehensive. They can lead to well-being factors. They can lead to happier employees who want to stay at the organization for longer. So we need to look at those and think about how we can measure them and how we can consider those in our business case. We know that lots of the templates organizations like you guys will use consider financial and non-financial benefits, and that is absolutely fine. But those non-financial benefits do have tangential overarching benefits that impact the organization and even the bottom line as well. Just thinking about recruitment costs, if you're losing employees and this helps increase retention, that is an indirect financial benefit that goes to well-being first, employee retention next, and then ultimately a financial benefit at the end. So it's not just about time saving, and I don't want us to get fixated on that. So when we think about what our organization means by return on investment, the third thing I kind of want us to agree on is that there may be some unanticipated benefits that start to become apparent. This technology is only 8-9 months old, and so we've started to see some unexpected benefits from it, but more will come. And I think in the coming months we will see, feedback from users who will be sharing maybe unanticipated benefits. So in order to accommodate those, we don't want a fixed view of what our success looks like. We need to have some key success metrics in place and KPIs, but also expand our notion on return and also hear from the users about what the return is in their day. So it's much better to pilot this technology or start to roll out this technology and hear from users directly, probably more than we have done before with our software pilots and rollouts. So although difficult to measure, let's just continue with this defining what we mean by return on investment. We've of course got that ROI and time back into the day, but the value proposition of Copilot also promises other returns. And these returns could be around creativity and innovation. They could be around well-being and accessibility. They could be around using that reclaimed time to feel more part of company culture. And they can be around people seeing Copilot as an employee benefit that they see as a positive for the organization as a whole. So we need to just kind of think a little bit beyond this. And some of these are not measurable from a time saving perspective. And we need to expand what we're going to measure and what our success metrics look like to enable us to truly define whether this investment is bringing us return and not just financial return as well. So we need to expand this equation at the top in order to do this, and we need to consider costs and returns and gains to be financial and non-financial. So we can answer 3 questions. Does Copilot save people time? And can ROI be achieved by Copilot? And if so, where? So it's not just a blanket question for everyone, and we'll come onto that later. What other returns and value does it bring that aren't a direct financial benefit, although may have trickle-down financial benefits? And also another question as well that comes up a little bit, and people are worried about what their peers are doing, but what's the cost of not doing this? So we're going to explore these over the next couple of slides. So the first is really thinking about that time saving and effectively breaking even. And people want to feel assured that people are going to get the benefit from the license, especially with that 12-month commitment. One thing I would say is, if you were to give a license to somebody and they were not seeing that benefit, you can reassign that license within the 12 months. They don't have to stick with it for a year. So we need to make sure that our licenses are with the right people. Again, we'll speak about that a bit later. So thinking about that minimum impact, that time saving needed to break even. If you haven't read this special report from Microsoft published in November of last year around what we can learn from Copilot's earliest users, I really recommend reading it. Just type it into Google, into Bing, and you will find this anywhere. And some of the key points it pulls out from a research study that it's done with the earliest users of Copilot is the time saving and speed impacts that Copilot can bring. And that's really where we're going to get that confidence on the ROI, or the confidence of our break-even point on the license. So the first thing to note is that Microsoft report a 14-minute per day time saving across their research, which went on through the autumn of last year. And they reported a 29% increase in speed in a series of tasks as well. So that's interesting to see. And I always recommend people take a look at this report and structure some of their measurement in a similar way to this, so you can compare to this global data that's available. So that's thinking about what Microsoft has said. What about the minimum then? So one of the things I've done here, one of the things leaders can do to drive ROI is actually realize that the break-even point for Copilot may be lower than you imagine. And even getting 100% or 200% of ROI actually is just the beginning. So I've mocked up a basic ROI calculator here, which again we can share with people if they would like it. And this mocks up some average UK salaries, and it takes into consideration number of days worked a year and average UK holiday. It also takes into consideration tax and pension contributions from the employee. So, if we've got an average UK salary or a salary band of 35k, we can look at the actual cost to the organisation beyond that as well. And using that, we're then able to mock up the minimum time saving needed from the employee, both on a monthly and daily basis, in order for the license to effectively pay for itself in that time saving. And this is a really useful way of just, rather than looking at the ROI and calculating the time saved overall, which we will do, we can also look at the minimum. And this is quite a reassuring metric for our senior stakeholders. It also sets a minimum kind of viable product for continuing to license someone. Are they saving? And you can see on the lowest band here, it's around the kind of 5-minute mark for employee time savings. And actually, the higher the salary of the individual, the lower the number of minutes needed to save a day. And actually, when you get up, you could be completing one or two tasks in Copilot every day, or even every week, and still be hitting break even on your licensing cost. So looking at it from this angle first, and then we'll look at the art of the possible and the percentage ROI we could achieve. So this helps set an MVP for licensing. The other thing is, once we know this, it enables us to create a roadmap or plan to reach that projected 14 minutes that Microsoft state and beyond. So if we know that a salary band 1 person only needs to save 5 minutes a day, and once we've measured and tested that, we see that they exceed that, we go, okay, how do we actually enable and optimize? It's not just it paying for itself, it's optimizing. And we're seeing from some organizations, people reporting 40 plus minutes of daily savings for the employees that we're measuring, which is really, really significant. So definitely one to explore here, look at the minimum, but then that allows you to sort of shoot for the art of the possible as well. So we've had step 1, consider what we mean by ROI. Step 2, identify what we need as a minimum to break even, and that's going to give us the confidence to proceed. Step 3 is an interesting one, and again, it's this kind of idea of competitive advantage. So I've seen a lot of modern workplace technologies sort of be launched, both with Microsoft and other technology companies as well. And I would say none has sort of taken off as quickly or has had much conversation around it as Copilot and M365. So, and I think that's partly due to the prevalence of generative AI, or will become the prevalence of generative AI in our personal lives as well. So as James said last week, our prompt engineering skills are not just for the workplace, they're going to become commonplace. And from all the conversations we're having and what we're hearing from Microsoft and all of our customers, all signs are pointing to this, to a mass adoption of Copilot globally. And this means we should not only consider ROI of doing it, but also the potential cost of not doing it. And we should consider this in our ROI conversations. So you can see here, last year, we did, in Q4 of 2023, we conducted a survey with more than 250 customers across the Reply network to see how the industry is getting ready for the emergence of Gen AI. And interesting stats here. So we have this available if people are interested in this full report, but I pulled out some key things here. So in terms of executive expectations of AI and thinking about what your peers, the conversations peers are having, 82% of senior management are actively involved in strategic AI decisions. But despite that enthusiasm, 62% of executives perceive their organization's AI maturity to be nascent or early. So we are in the early stages, and we've got the opportunity to jump on and explore this and be ahead of the curve here. The other thing is around perception, around Copilot's or generative AI's impact in the future. Executives unanimously acknowledge AI's transformative impact, and executives express optimism about generative AI in terms of workforce productivity. I've also pulled out some interesting stats around the most mature industries for AI. And everyone's agreeing that strategic planning must take place. So the headlines really are that everybody is having this conversation. It is a priority in everybody's strategies. And lots of the conversations we're having with organizations are actually not coming from a CTO, CIO, CDO. They're coming from other executives who want to see Copilot or generative AI used in their workplace, and they're not even technology people. They want to seem ahead of their peers. So we want to consider what the potential cost is here of falling behind our peers, consider what the trends are today, and ensure that we are not going to, this could lead to our peers having a competitive advantage over us. Great stuff. So step 4 is actually, in order for us to really feel confident and drive ROI, is we need to measure what that time saving and productivity looks like. So one thing we're seeing a lot in the early access programs and pilots is people thinking about, okay, let's ask users, if we don't have tools that can run in the background, we need to ask users for their feedback. And that is really, really key. We need data from users to proceed with this and to understand the impact and drive ROI. What people tend to focus on is this app time saving. So really thinking like, okay, every week, how much time do you save in Copilot in Outlook or Copilot in Copilot Chat? And users will report that back, and we can take some nice averages, and that's all very well. What I think we are missing slightly is First of all, users are not amazing at predicting their own behavior. And when you plot all these together, sometimes they seem inconceivable, the amount of time that's saved, or, people don't know how much time they save, they spend on some of these tools. So actually looking at task-based as well as app-based is going to be really, really helpful for us to help define ROI and then drive ROI by advocating Copilot use in the right places. So we want to be identifying tasks where Copilot can help. And I just shared a few here. So writing a job description, which might be a bit more specific, sharing meeting actions, which most of us might do who attend online meetings, and then creating a training deck, which again might be a bit more specialized to role. These are individual tasks, and what we can start to think about is measuring the time saving, the quality saving, the effort reduction that each of these tasks takes with Copilot versus without Copilot. And we really want to contextualize for users this idea that it's not me or Copilot, it's me completing the task or Copilot giving me the first draft and then me finishing the task. So we want to make sure people aren't comparing just Copilot's initial output to my own output. So we really want to expand this idea beyond just looking at apps. And this is more robust than we would have done with probably other software before. And what this enables us to then do, we can map these together. And we're doing this for lots of organizations right now, where we take some key fundamental business processes like a product to market, software to production, or a campaign going live. We map the tasks that take place within that are standardized, and the frequency those tasks take place over, let's say, a 6-month period of a product to market. And we try and show how much time ultimately is saved on some of these bottom line activities, such as product to market, software to production, or a campaign going live. And we can actually look beyond just daily time savings for an individual user and start to extrapolate these into our wider business and how this affects revenue in the bottom line. So we need to expand our measurement and really get a grips of where this is going to have impact and where we're targeting that impact as well. So the other thing I'd really advocate to help drive ROI, when we need to measure and we need to get good measurements so we know where to use Copilot for which tasks and what we're advocating for people. So step 5 here is really exploring some different data gathering approaches than you may have done previously. So lots of people were sending out some quick pulse surveys and looking at the active usage telemetry in Copilot Admin Center or dashboard, and that's all very well. Some of these full cohort surveys for our pilot users or our ERP users or our first licensed users often can be quite basic in their approach to the data gathering. And we can add a level of robustness to this and start to consider some of those non-financial benefits and how we best get data from our users on this too, because that's not something that's going to show up in the telemetry in our dashboard. And then if we think about some more kind of some different efforts to gather data as well, and we recognize you might not be able to do these for everyone. So we typically will advocate taking a focused research group of 15 or 20 people and focusing in on these. And this is where we can really get that insight around tasks and the comparative capability of Copilot versus not on certain tasks. So this is why the sort of third pillar here is really all around task identification. And we can do focus groups, user interviews, or we can do some sort of questionnaires here instead, which are focused on task frequency and task identification. And then we can identify what are the typical tasks for different roles and personas in the organization. And then we can start to think about the use cases where Copilot's going to intersect and really think into those overall processes where Copilot will have an impact. And there's something here we're doing with lots of organizations at the moment. It's called A/B testing. And that's where we ask a user, the same user, because of the variance in the way people do tasks, to complete a task themselves alone and then with Copilot. So Copilot will give them the first effort and they will edit that. And then we will ask them for their time, quality, effort reduction, their quality experiences with Copilot and capture that data. And this will show us what types of users are benefiting the most, what types of tasks does Copilot have the best impact in, which can help us define which users to license. And that will enable us to drive ROI, because we're all confident, pretty much all organizations I speak to are confident they're not in a position yet to be considering licensing everyone. They want to know who. And in order to drive ROI, we need to know who is best going to benefit. And we need to take this moment, do a little bit of robust testing to find that out rather than guessing. And so to think about that, once we have the data, we need to have a look at the averages of those core metrics to see what the impact is like, and make sure it's worthwhile for us to invest in. Look at the trends, who who's benefiting the most? Are we seeing people in procurement or legal benefiting the most? Is it people who spend a lot of time producing written content-based tasks? And that's where we're going to get the return from a Copilot license. So we need to really get into this data and make sure that we fully understand, what the overall results look like, but then also deep dive by task type and by individual functional or role. And if you have existing personas, you can map these to these personas as well and cut the data any way you like. And this will enable us to identify those high impact areas where we're going to get that return. We also have to measure this against a level of anecdotal feedback too. So we want to hear from users, and I'm sure anyone who's already got a licensed cohort will be doing this already, and they'll be hearing back from users around where it's having positive impact and where it isn't. We often are hearing that it's having less impact from a data analysis perspective in Excel. So we also want to have a look overarchingly, because we don't want to be giving a license to someone maybe who's a data analyst who spends 70% of their day in Excel. We might still want to license them for the meetings component, but they're not necessarily going to get the full benefit of Copilot. So we want to have a look at that and learn from that anecdotal feedback of what's working and what's not. So step 6 is really thinking about that reclaimed time. So it's that point I made at the start. If we want to see this return, it's not just our time savings achieved. I think most places we see that they are. It's what happens to those time savings. First of all, are they being more productive? Where are they spending that time? And does it align to your strategic principles? And then the return is obvious. If Copilot licensing is returning on your strategic principles, maybe you have something around more dedicated time to creative thinking, or we need to be upping our management and mentoring capabilities. So you can see that time impact may not make people fundamentally more productive in a traditional sense. It might be making people have more time to invest more in their direct reports and ultimately increase skills across the organization. So we want to measure this reclaimed time. As it stands, there's not an easy way for us to do this, although I hear murmurings about the Copilot dashboard to see kind of with and without Copilot what an employee's day looks like. But what we can do is ask users organically where they're spending that time, that reclaimed time. Something I'll add to this is that, often in an EAP, we ask people what happens organically to their time, but we actually have the opportunity to directly influence that. And the next 3 slides, the next 3 steps around driving ROI, are those active steps you can take to do this. So do we define from a functional or all organization level what that reclaimed time is going to look like? So we can measure organically, and then we can decide, okay, we want that reclaimed time to look like this, and then we will measure that new factor. Maybe it's more time for management of our direct reports before and after Copilot, and see if we've had the necessary return on our investment in that metric. The next is really around robust adoption and change. If you've worked with me before, you'll know I'll talk about this really all day long. But I think that the big thing about Copilot here is that it is intuitive, it is a natural language model, but it does require a level of skill. And I'll often remind people that if you had a new direct report, it might take you sort of 6 to 8 weeks to get to know them and their communication style. So think about your new Copilot license as the same, learning how to get the most out of it. So if we truly want to drive ROI, I'll often meet users who are really loving Copilot, but they are using Recapture meeting and they are drafting an email in Outlook, and they're occasionally asking M365 to capture their actions across all their different experiences. They're loving it, and they're saving 15 minutes a day, and they're well worth their license, but they're not optimized on the tool. So if we want to first, get back those 15 minutes or 14 minutes that Microsoft profess and achieve that 300% ROI on our lowest salary of which has a 5-minute per day saving needed, we'll get our 300% ROI back. Then we want to make sure we can take them a step on from that. We want to make sure they fully understand all the prompts that they can get out of it, and some of these tangential benefits as well. So some of them, again, are non-financial. So one I use a lot in Copilot meetings, it's list different perspectives on this call, and it will show me who's agreeing with each other, what the different perspectives are. And I think that is really, really useful to land with employees, to sort of see who's agreeing with each other, who's not, who's contributing, who's not. That's not necessarily a financial benefit, but that's an optimal use of a Copilot license. And people don't know about this unless it's shared. They really focus in on those kind of top recap summarize, and write me a new email. And that's all very well, but we really want to take people to the next level. So, we really advocate having a robust adoption and change approach here, and that is going to ultimately drive your ROI. It's a basic one, but it's one that a lot of people are willing to invest in the license, but not willing to invest in the adoption and change efforts. And I would say people need support over those first 3 months of a license to take them from a kind of rudimental use through to a more advanced use as well. And there's 4 key things we can do here, as well as our kind of stakeholder advocacy, which we'll see in the next few slides. We want to define an adoption of support period from license allocation. So not just one onboarding, but what does the first 2 to 3 months look like? Regular training and drop-in touch points, a drumbeat of communications that people are getting regular top tips, they're hearing about cool prompts, maybe you've got a prompts library going, and also some level of engaged community, and that could be a Teams channel or a Viva engaged community with easy access to self-serve multi-channel training materials. So it's an obvious one, and it's one close to my heart, but it's one that really, if we're going to invest in the licensing, we need to invest in adequate change and adoption efforts to take people on that journey and take them beyond those basic prompts. There we go. So step 8 is all around establishing and advocating that cultural change. So this is you as a leader or your leaders in the organization. Copilot is an enabler. It is not the silver bullet. So if you want people to attend fewer meetings, that's great. And Copilot gives you some of the capability to do that. But what we've seen from our OLED Copilot users is people don't organically do that themselves. So they'll go, okay, cool, I can use Copilots to recap and catch up, but they're unlikely to not attend the meeting at all. This new follow a meeting feature is coming, which I'm really excited about, meaning that as well as accepting and declining a meeting, I can click to follow it, and then I can use the recap features and the transcript after the fact, but I will be marked as available in my diary, and I can attend another call or get on with another task. So Copilot itself is not the silver bullet here, though, because as I said, the data is showing people still attend those meetings and they're reluctant not to attend. If you want to enable some of these changes and alleviate some of that time back in diaries, not just writing up a meeting notes, but not having to have everyone attend the meeting at all, we need to advocate a cultural change. And that might need to come from middle management to the different functional areas, or it might need to come from really C-suite level to say, look, we're enabling people on Copilot. We want to reduce the number of meetings in the organization, by 10%. And encourage people to do that and say Copilot is the enabler here. So we need to enable a cultural change. And to do that, we need to define what success looks like and decide what those cultural levers are. So I've just given you an example of reducing meetings. That needs to be the cultural change that senior leadership are seen to be behind. And we need those senior resources to understand the opportunity and the points I've just made here about Copilot as an enabler and what we're trying to achieve, and that we can all get the job done and have more time back in our day and feel better about work and be more creative if we use these new technology capabilities to enable us. We need leaders to advocate from the top. So to drive real ROI, to enable that cultural change, we need advocacy. It's always the case in a change in comms activity, but we need leaders to advocate from the top. And of course, we need a level of patience and we need a level of kind of reiteration to give these changes time to flourish. So, keep drumming, banging the drum on these cultural changes, saying like over the next 3 months or 6 months, we're going to reduce the number of meetings. We're advocating this from the top and we're actively trying to reduce meetings. Use Copilot as your enabler to catch up on what you missed in a meeting. So 2 more steps to get us to our 10 steps to help drive ROI. The second to last one is anticipating that Copilot is an employee benefit. So it is a return. It's giving people time back in their day. It's improving well-being. We're seeing really positive impacts when it comes to productivity, and people are reporting themselves to be more engaged on meetings, more creative. But we also anticipate in the next year or so that Copilot will be listed as an employee benefit. And when people look for jobs, I know certainly if I was ever looking for a job again, I would be looking to see if I had a Copilot license, because I would feel like I was taking a huge step back in terms of my productivity to not have that. So start to anticipate that Copilot will be seen as an employee benefit and investment, and it will help ultimately increase talent retention. So we've asked some users up the earliest Copilot organizations, if you were to have Copilot as listed as with a role and you were considering a role versus another, all other things being equal, would it make you more likely to take the role? And over 2/3 of people said strongly agree. And that's significant. So people are seeing that, they don't want to take a step back now they have the license. And I've spoken to lots of users who say, please don't take it away after the EAP. I really want to continue using it. And lots of users reporting, again, in that special report from Microsoft, that they value it more than a monthly free lunch and that users would pay for the license themselves if they could. So we want to anticipate this as a benefit, that people see this as a really important part of their productivity and a real valuable thing that an organization can give an employee. And finally, step 10. So, all of these things considered are about identifying the benefit, enabling the benefit, taking an active step, and Copilot is an enabler, but the active step leaders need to do to drive that return out of it. And all of these things can lead us to our insight, which is the other fundamental thing, that in order to get return, we need to license the right people. So as I said before, we don't want to be licensing people who maybe are using tools where it's a little bit immature, or isn't giving the feedback that we want. So we want to use this insight and fundamentally put a roadmap together to identify the user groups who are going to get benefit. And that's how we can really drive return. We don't want to necessarily license everyone, at least not straight away. Let's focus our efforts on the areas where we're going to get the best capability. So that takes us to 22, which gives us lots of time now for questions. So I'm going to put this up on the screen, and I'm just going to have a quick look at the Q&A feature and see what questions we already have. Cool, we don't have any questions yet. So if people want to add their questions into the chat, that would be great. I don't know, Carly, whether we want to unmute people, give them the ability to ask any questions, or we want to stick to the Q&A. I don't mind.
Yeah, I think we'll stick to the Q&A, Katie. If anybody's got any questions, they can just put that in the chat. Otherwise, if you think of anything later, we'll be following up with everybody, sharing a copy of the recording, and we can definitely get to any specific questions for your organization that way too.
Okay. Well, I've covered some of the basics and some of the thinking around that return, and hopefully that is helpful. So we're going to stick around on the call for another 3 minutes or so, just if any questions pop up. But do get in touch, and if you want to share this recording, this will go up on our YouTube channel. You can share it on to other people. Cool. Oh yeah, somebody's missed the session, but yeah, absolutely, the recording will be shared. So do come back and watch. Okay, cool. Well, while we just see if there's any more questions coming in, just want to say thank you so much for joining. And if you're interested in learning more, we've got loads of resources all around Copilot. I'm just going to share again our view of the webinar series upcoming. So you can scan those QR codes, and you can also search for our webinar series as well. Next week's all around the different Copilots across the Microsoft stack, and also the Copilot extensibility one. And one final thing I want to finish on, which is very exciting, is our in-person event on Copilot. So it's part of our Fall in Love series, which we have every year, and it's on M365 Copilot, surprise, surprise. And that is on the 8th of May in London. So again, you can scan this QR code as well if you're interested in attending. Great stuff. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it. Don't hesitate to get in touch, and do watch back the recording or share with other colleagues. Have a great day.